What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Make Money and Have Fun show. I gotta say, this is probably gonna be my favorite show so far. I'm the most anxious to get through this one because I got a super cool guest today. Today, I'm sitting down with David Hancock, who I'm gonna tell you a lot more about in just a minute. But first, I want to talk to all of you out there. So remember, as always, this show is so cool because it's completely interactive. It gives you, the audience members, the chance to actually come in and ask us questions. And there's a couple different ways to have your questions answered. The first and simplest way is simply just to write a comment. So if you're streaming us live on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever you're streaming us live at, because we are broadcasted all over the place, if you just type in your comment, if you just type in your question in the comments, I can actually bring it right up on screen just like this. And then we can ask your question live on screen. But there's also something else really cool that I did as well. So if you see this little phone number down here, 215-596-1515. So that's actually my business line. That's my business cell phone line. It goes right to my cell phone. Now, here's the really cool thing. If you text in the word David for David Hancock, today's guest, to that number, 215-596-1515, you can actually be brought backstage with us, get a little VIP access going on, and you can ask your question live backstage right here with us. So I'm going to leave that down below. Just let it scroll by. If you want some VIP access, just text David to that number. But now, without any further ado, I need to introduce my guest. So this guy has done a whole bunch of really amazing stuff in his life. So David Hancock is a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author, and he's the founder of Morgan James Publishing. NASDAQ has also cited David as one of the world's most prestigious business leaders. That's such a big title that I can barely even pronounce it. He was elected for Fast Company magazine's Fast 50 for his leadership, creative thinking, significant accomplishments, and his significant impact on the industry over the last 10 years. So on that note, please help me welcome Mr. David Hancock. What's going on?
That's right. Good morning, Mr. Fred. How you doing?
I'm doing great. One thing that I have to mention to everybody is David always has this upbeat, chipper, energetic personality going on. And it's one of my favorite things about him. I don't know. I feel like I've almost been consistently coaching with David. I've had a dozen or so calls with him, and every single time he's got this upbeat energy going on. It's like the first time he ever met me, and I'm like, man, this is fun. So I'm super excited to have you here, David. I hope you're happy to be here.
I'm very, very happy to be here because I love having fun while making money, and I love making money and having fun. But you're right, and I'm that way every single day. Every day it's on purpose. Some days it is by faith, I will confess, but every day it's a decision I make. I'm gonna be the same way, and it's part of the reason why I have fun.
I love that. David, I want to start you off. I want to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests to get our show started, and you are free to answer this whatever way you like. David,
or ignore it if I have to. No.
Or ignore it. I haven't had anybody ignore it yet, so you would be a trendsetter if you did that. David, what is your story?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can't ignore that one because it's one of my favorite ones to tell. So I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I founded a publishing house about 18 years ago now.
Okay.
And that is probably the last thing that I would have ever imagined to have done. Because I was a man, God's got a sense of humor with me. I went through many different little career bumps until I found my sweet spot. I barely passed high school. Okay, I'll confess, I barely passed high school. I was too busy chasing soccer balls and my now wife, of course. And then I dropped out of college. It just wasn't for me. I just felt like I was in the 13th grade and I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do with my life. So I ended up just kind of bouncing around, to other things. And again, each one is a part of who I am today. Of course, I'm very proud of it. But in the early 90s, I managed to stumble across mortgage banking. So I was a mortgage banker and ended up doing really, really well. I mean, I ended up liking math for some reason. I like math and people. That's how I ended up in banking.
Interesting.
And I was a top producer. I was doing really well, but I was competing with 1,000 people just like me, and we were all offering the exact same product or service to the community. Right. Granted, they were all loosely regulated mortgage products, as we learned in 2008. But it was working for me. But I wanted to figure out how could I, stay on top, and I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I just knew that, you know, I couldn't keep it up. It was a high stress job, and we were spending a fortune in advertising. Of course, fortunately, it was the bank's money, not mine, but you know, we were just spending a fortune, but so could everybody else. It was really, really frustrating. And so I started to study. And I started to study anything and everything related to sales or marketing or business, because I just didn't know. You know, I didn't know what I needed, didn't know what I wanted. But I managed to discover the greats. You know, I went to Tom Hopkins conferences, Zig Ziglar's conferences. I bought their material. I came back. I implemented even some people in specific industry stuff like Todd Duncan and Bill Backrack. If anybody ever heard of those guys in the 90s. Yep. And their programs were all amazing. And I'm a good implementer. I'd come back and I would fine tune some processes. I would hire a couple of assistants. I worked a little bit smarter, made a little bit more money, but nothing really gave me that bolster in my career that I was looking for until one day. And this is also kind of funny. A book landed on my desk. I don't remember where it came from, who gave it to me, whether I bought it or I stole it. Pretty sure I didn't steal it. But somehow I got a copy of Guerrilla Marketing. Now, Guerrilla Marketing had been around for a little while. In fact, it was in its 3rd edition by the time I discovered it. I'm sure you've read it, Fred.
Yeah.
Heck, good answer. Good answer. So I discovered Guerrilla Marketing, and I realized I was a success for a reason. I was a guerrilla marketer and didn't know it. And what that means was I was leveraging more of my time, my energy, and my imagination and relationships to add value to my clients. And I was doing things that were unconventional. In fact, guerrilla marketing, the definition of guerrilla marketing is to doing unconventional things to gain conventional goals. It's originally designed for small businesses or entrepreneurs who didn't have any money. Now, I was a W-2 employee who had unlimited ad budgets, but again, like I said, it was the same thing that everybody else had, so we kind of all was starting from the beginning. So I really resonated with guerrilla marketing, and it was very affirming, but it didn't necessarily teach me anything new, although I still encourage every single one of you to read it. It's in its 4th edition now. Of course, it's dedicated to me. Jay Levinson ended up becoming a dear friend. We'll talk more about that later, but it's a phenomenal book. But it was very affirming to know I was doing the right things, I was heading down the right path, and I was a success for a reason. But I ended up wanting to take it to the next level because I wanted to figure out, well, what more can I do it? Because I hadn't quite found what I thought I was looking for. And I reached out to the author, which is something I've been coaching you, Fred, to make sure that your authors have, or your readers rather, have a way to connect with you. And something like this is a phenomenal platform for doing that, because we desire a relationship with an authority in this space. We want to know that you care about our success. And that's exactly what Jay did. You know, Jay cared. So he responded to me and ended up hiring him as a coach. You know, unfortunately, the bank paid for it, so it was like 10 grand out of my pocket every month, but it worked.
That's fun.
So I started to spend a lot of time with Jay, and he still didn't necessarily teach me anything more than I couldn't get out of the books or what I was doing already, but it was still very affirming, and it was very positive to have that accountability partner to know that you're heading down the right path. And his stories were amazing, and we became fast friends. I'm a huge fan for everybody to have some sort of mentor, either be in a mastermind group or have a mentor or a coach and do what they're teaching you, because it can make a big difference. But so over the months, Jay continued to nurture our relationship and fine tune my guerrilla marketing skills. And he ended up sharing 3 things with me that ended up changing not only my day job for the good, but also my end up career, which is ultimately, I think, the question you're asking is, how I got here. I think I forgot the question already, but I hope am I doing okay?
You're doing great. This is awesome. I missed everything you just said, though. Go back to the beginning. Start over.
Oh, yeah. So I was born back in 19. No, I won't go that far. So Jay was sharing with me, he said, in one of those little casual conversations that he's done so well with me, he said, David, if you wanted to charge more and negotiate less, I mean, Fred, who doesn't want to charge more and negotiate less, regardless of what widget you're selling? I mean, who doesn't? I'm like, sign up, right?
Yeah.
So he said, well, if you want to charge more and negotiate less, you got to keep doing what you're doing because it's working. I'm like, yeah, but I want more. Not that that's a bad thing, but he said, well, you're having an impact and you're creating opportunity and you're creating change. So, you got to keep doing what you're doing because it's working. I'm like, yeah. He said, but then you need to add one more thing. I'm like, I'm ready, which is one thing. Well, he wasn't ready to tell me yet. Either he wanted a few more months out of me or I wasn't ready in my space to know what that was yet. Right. And so the next month he went on to share with me, he said, David, if you wanted to have those clients that you wished you could do business with, which we all do. I'm sure we all have those kind of whale of a clients that you just know, oh, if I could land that deal, that'd be great. And sure enough, in my industry, in the banking industry back then, They were celebrity real estate agents, and they were lawyers and CPAs who had access to big clients with lots of money. Well, sure, who doesn't want to do business with those guys?
Of course.
But I had lots of them that didn't even return my phone calls or didn't even know I existed. And I'm like, yeah, Jay, I want that. Yeah, how do I do that? He says, well, you got to keep doing what you're doing because it's working and you're leaving an impact. You're making a legacy. People are starting to find out who you are, of course, but you need to add one more thing. I'm like, Jay, what is this one thing already? Well, I wasn't ready, or he wasn't ready to share with me yet, and I'm still grateful for his process. And then finally, Fred, and this is kind of one that I wasn't really expecting, he said, David, if you wanted the media to call you when something happened in your space, in the banking space for me, he says, you've got to keep doing what you're doing because you're having an impact, you're getting recognized, you're having successes, you've got growing client lists. He said, but if you want the media to reach out to you, which I'm like, who am I? And like I said, I barely passed high school, dropped out of college, and I found a niche. What does that make me? Why would they want to talk to me? But there was always something, of course, going on in banking. They always had some sort of bobblehead on television or being quoted in the paper about it. So I'm thinking, well, maybe, I don't know. I didn't quite see it, but he did. And he said, well, David, if you added one more thing to what you're doing, you could have that. And I'm like, okay. Well, you can tell me now? Well, sure enough, he did. I finally got to the point where I was ready. And he said, David, you need to write a book. And I was crushed. And I laughed out loud at the same time. Because like, who am I to write a book? And surely he's jesting because I'm not that guy, But he was very gracious, very loving. And he calmed me down and helped me realize that I was a success for a reason. I was doing things good. I was serving others. I was having success. My clients were having success. So surely somebody could learn from me. And I'm thinking, well, maybe so, because I have a small team of people who work with me and I had clients all across the country. Maybe I could write a book. Well, he compelled me to do so. And I did. Didn't realize that was a hard thing to do. As you know, it's not necessarily easy, but once you get your mind to it and think about it in the small pieces, not the big piece of a book, it can come together. And for me, it ended up being a stress reliever. I jotted down an outline, like this is exactly kind of what Jay and I talked about, Fred. I said, okay, Fred would sit down with me for at least 40 minutes. Here are the 10 or 12 things I'm going to get off. He runs away or gets out of the chair and starts screaming. So I started with an outline and I just started to fill in the blanks as something happened in that day. And I literally wrote to the outline kind of scattered based on what was happening that week or that time and how I could serve others. And like I said, it ended up being a stress reliever. I would do 15, 20 minutes in the evening on the couch with my bride. And it ended up being fun. And I ended up getting it published, Fred. I mean, I don't remember how many rejections I got. I know, right? Like,
that's crazy.
But I didn't remember it being a really hard thing. So maybe I had some good influence or good connections because of Jay, which I'm sure I did, but I managed to get it published. And in less than 8 months, everything Jay had professed happened. I literally doubled my already six-figure income. And the only thing I did different was yesterday I was a successful hustler in a good way. And then, 8 months later, I was a recognized authority. I had the power of the book in my hand, and I became, the authority in my space. And then, of course, I doubled all my fees, and nobody asked me any questions. And sure enough, the clients that would never give me the time of day were begging to get on my calendar. Of course, I had to swallow my pride and take their money because, I needed that. And then sure enough, the media was calling me on a weekly basis. I'm like, you sure you got the right Hancock? No, it's me. Okay. So fine. So I talked to the media on a regular basis, and I was either interviewed on television or quoted in the newspaper or, talked to on the radio. And it was like weekly. It was like all these things Jay said came true. It was amazing. But, and this is the start of how I got here today. The big but in the room, and it's not mine in the chair. It was that it ended up being one of the worst experiences I had gone through from a business to business kind of relationship. It wasn't fun. And I, like you, like to have fun in everything that I do. Sure. But I ended up selling the rights to my work to a publisher. That was the way you do it, and they took over. And I had no input in anything. In fact, I didn't even like the book when it came out. I had no input in the cover, no input in the title. They even added 3 chapters to my book, Fred. When I got the book in the mail, like weeks before pub date, I'm like, oh, there's a mistake here. I called up my editor, 10 days later. They called me back. It's like, what is this? He said, no, we thought that needed to be in there. So we put it in there for you. I'm like, well, thanks for telling me. It was good. But it was like things like that. And then I could never, I know, right? I could never sell enough to make them happy.
Right.
But I was locked into that publisher for 3 books. So I ended up, doing well enough that they're like, okay, time for book 2. And I'm like, not this again. But it worked. I mean, it really worked. In fact, I became so passionate about the power of the book to be a guerrilla marketing weapon in your arsenal to market yourself and your widgets and your wares to the world, regardless if you had an unlimited ad budget like I did. In fact, I started to spend significantly less on marketing because I didn't need to. It was amazing. So by the time it came around for me to do book 2, I convinced my now dear friend, Jay Levinson, who I was still coaching with, to go on with me as a co-author. And he said yes. So then at that point, I was able to stop paying him because now we're co-authors, right? So that was good. So we ended up co-authoring a book together called Guerrilla Marketing. So I can't remember my title. It's Guerrilla Marketing for Mortgage Brokers. Phenomenal book. And at this point, I had graduated from, like a consumer-based, driven where I would offer people like you and me money to buy a house or refinance a house, to me now selling, banking products to loan officers like I was. So my clients were now the old me. So I was really thriving in teaching them guerrilla marketing, of course, offering our products and services. And my business was just growing. But one of the things that I was teaching them at the time was they need to do what I did. Like Jay taught me, you need to write a book because it transformed my life. But I spent a lot of time helping others realize their goals, which is part of my Zig Ziglar training. And of course, it's certainly sprinkled into guerrilla marketing. But the more that I tried to help them grow their business, the more that I tried to help them, reach their goals and solve their problems, the more money I ended up making. And the book was one of my secret weapons for them to listen to me and take me, seriously. And so the second book came out, and we had a little bit more input, partly because Jay, he'd already sold 15 million copies of his book. But Jay owned the brand, so the title was locked in, but we really struggled with the publisher to convince them to use the camouflage motif that he had already started to use. And we struggled with, what the book should look like and feel like and price and all that kind of stuff. But we got it done, and it did well. In fact, I sold 40,000 copies to the bank I worked for. Like, wow, that's wonderful. And I'm a best-selling author now. But we still could never make the publisher happy. And it was still a cantankerous relationship. And every time I needed books, I had maxed out the number of copies I could buy at my author discount. So I'm having to buy them at retail. And every time I wanted to do a talk or create a course or product behind the book, I had to get permissions. They owned the text. And it was really frustrating. And then by my third book, which was second edition of the Guerrilla Marketing book, this was like 99. We came time to a new book. The internet was here and alive, and we were getting ready to cross over Y2K. There's a lot of great opportunities to help people market their businesses, and the publisher was ready. And we're like, okay, this is a great opportunity. But in all the talks with the publisher, we came to a stumble in the road where they wouldn't let us use the word internet in our book. Now, this was 99. The internet was here. They thought it wasn't going to pass Y2K. They thought Y2K was going to crush it. Now, if you guys are younger than I am, Y2K was when they had the little computer glitch where they weren't really designed to go into the millennial, into the 2000s and beyond. Okay. But they fixed it, and it worked, and the internet was still here, but my book was immediately irrelevant because it was the only book on the market in the early 2000s that didn't talk about the internet. So needless to say, the publisher went under, and I was an orphaned author, and it was just really, really frustrating. But all the while, I am thriving as a banker. I'm teaching others to do books like I did. I'm helping people get book deals. I'm helping them find self-publishing, which is absolutely better than doing nothing at all. And my clients were growing, and their business were exploding, and yet they were having trouble with their publisher too, or they were fighting with the publishers, or they were having success in the self-publisher side, but not the same level of success. It ended up kind of taking over my life, and I think kind of in a good way. It was a lot of fun. So then I ended up self-publishing a couple books myself because I'm thinking, hey, now that I'm a best-selling author, I could do this on my own. Who needs a publisher, right? Yeah. So I ended up self-publishing like 3 books, and I loved it. I loved everything about it except the media would never talk to me about my self-publishing books. It's like, it's here, it's new, it's now. The ones who are talking to me, they're 5 years old now, or quite, something like that. And I had very limited distribution. Amazon was in its infancy, but it was still there. But I had a garage full of books and no credibility, or very little credibility, I should say, and no really real way to sell my self-published books. That was frustrating. So I sat down with Jay one day. I said, Jay, man, somebody's got to fix publishing. They tend to get in the way of we entrepreneurs. And he says, I know, it's been like that since 1920s or whatever. And nobody did. So I ended up sitting down with Jay, as I mentioned, and we sat down, we wrote an outline out for what an entrepreneurial publishing house should look like. And I mean, I layered it heavy in guerrilla marketing. I sprinkled it deep with Zig Ziglar. I added lots of value-based stuff from Bill Bacharach, and I just created, hopefully, was trying to create, one day a publishing house that had, credibility, distribution, opportunity, and success for our authors. Right. But I had nothing to offer. But I still had a thriving day job as a banker, so I kind of started this on the side. So in 2003, I launched it, named it after my kids, little Morgan and James, who are no longer little anymore. And it just happened to be the right thing at the right time. And of course, I was blessed. We ended up doing a 3-book deal with Jay. So we put out 3 fresh, brand new guerrilla marketing books with Jay. So certainly had an impact there. Right. And then I just managed to attract people like you, people that are significant in their space, that are passionate, enthusiastic about the product, and have great options, but really wanted the better solution. And we started just to publish books, and I had no distribution, had no credibility. I really had nothing but my rugged good looks and a good idea, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But we grew into the space. So now, what is it, almost 18 years later, now the industry sees us as a typical traditional New York house, which is terrifying because that's not what I wanted to be. Because, it's not a good thing. But I think the reason why we're successful because I carved out all the things that I didn't like about traditional, and I tried to add in a lot of the things I did like about the self-publishing side,
sure,
and kind of blended this little unconventional model. And I think that's the reason why we're successful, because our authors love us, our authors are doing well, their goals are being met, but yet we have credibility, distribution, and opportunity in the space. And my gracious, a publisher our size and this young, to have 29 New York Times bestsellers in our short history and over 65 USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestsellers, it just doesn't happen. So we've been very blessed, but we're learning a lot and teaching our authors a lot. In fact, I ended up just to kind of fill that gap here, I ended up quitting my day job as a banker about a year and a half later, and just set out and earned what we have. And then a lot of great doors were opened up. And Fred, I forgot what the question was, but I've enjoyed telling the story. But that's how I got here. That's who I am.
That was amazing. I mean, normally I'll cut people off on that question just because it goes on and on.
You
but
think?
I'm like, I love this story. I got to hear this from the beginning. And it's funny because I even learned some things about you. And the really cool thing, and I do this every time, and it's so amazing. So not recently, I guess about a year ago or so, I was at a seminar. And it was a really small, intimate seminar, about 8 people there or so, something like that. And one of the speakers went up in the front of the room and he handed everybody a Post-it note. And he said, I want you to write 4 words or less that describes who you are. It describes your philosophy.
Wow.
And that's where I came up with make money and have fun. That's literally, that was the only thing. I sat there for like 10 minutes and I'm like, this is the only thing that I have. And I wrote that down. And since then, for whatever reason, about a year and a half ago, it's become my mantra. It's become my thing. And every guest that I bring on here, it's like every story that they tell, they're like, yeah, I was making a crap ton of money, but I had no fulfillment, right? Or they were really fulfilled, but I needed to make more money. And so it's like everywhere that you look at these people's stories, these entrepreneurs and these investors' stories, it's always bridging that gap between both their passion and their prosperity. So,
man, you set it in motion. For that, you absolutely set it in motion. That is so awesome, and what a great tool to use by writing your goals down, no matter how lofty it may have sounded at the time. But well done.
Yeah, it was really a cool thing, and now I got the book coming out, the Make Money and Have Fun. I got the Make Money and Have Fun show. I got the YouTube channel. I got a mastermind that I'm starting, and it's all just under this umbrella, and it's just been so much fun, especially hanging out with you, bringing you on here. And it sounds like really your story was like, man, I'm making so much money, but I think that there's more fulfillment to be out there. And that really is just, I think, that entrepreneurial journey. But David, we got to hit something before I send you off. And that is officially writing your book, right? So I'm sure a lot of people are on here. Wow, it actually shows up kind of cool on screen. Look at that.
Yeah, it does.
Almost like see-through. That's interesting. So this is the first book that I ever wrote. This is called The Revolutionary Mindset. It's available on Amazon. And like you said, this was a tedious, arduous undertaking writing this book the first time. And it was actually funny, just to really quick hit my story, and then I'll ask you about it. It was funny. The day I finished my book, I'm like, that's it. I'm never writing again. And the next morning I woke up and the only thing I wanted to do was write. And so I started blogging shortly after that, because I'm like, wait, I can I can get my message across and publish it very quickly. And then about 4 years later, I put that into my second book, The Thought Bible, which is actually the proof version, as you can see. And this is basically just a collection of all my different blog posts that I wrote throughout those years on there. So I got those 2 books coming out, and then I got a third one that's going to be published with this really interesting publishing house called Morgan James. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they did stuff like .com Secrets, they did Expert Secrets, they did Ultimate Freedom, and they even have a partnership going on with Dan Miller in 48 Days to the Work You Love and all that kind of stuff. So
that's right.
What about you, David? What would you say to someone who is thinking about becoming an author or thinking about writing their first book? What's that journey like for you, and what do you recommend for people like that?
So I would say that a large portion of the population wants to write a book.
Yes.
A small portion of the population actually does, and an even smaller portion of the public actually gets it published. So I say yes, because it is such a powerful tool. Now, you've got to be writing it for others. You can't write it just as a fluff piece. You can't be using it just to leverage it like we did. That was a side benefit. And there's ways to really make sure those things happen, but you got to think first to the reader and how you can serve others, and it can make the biggest difference. And then just don't think about the book. Think about what could I share with the world that would change their lives, and how could I get connected with those people to grow both my life and their life, and start writing an outline, just like I did with my first book. You know, what could I get across to Fred before he ran out of the room screaming, you know, real quick, and just start writing it. And next thing you know, you'll be standing out above and beyond everybody else. You know, Performance-Driven Thinking was my 15th book, and that was the first one to hit the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. So have patience, because sometimes it doesn't always work as quickly as you want. But you know, God's got a sense of humor and a plan. But do it. You know, start writing. Start thinking about wanting to write a book. But you'll also need to do, if you got time, Fred, I want to help people understand this. No matter how you publish a book, whether you get picked up by Simon & Schuster, or whether we have the privilege of working together at Morgan James, or you end up self-publishing the book, there's 2 bridges you need to cross down this path to really be able to have the success. And I didn't really go deep into this with my coaching with Jay, but you really need to become that authority in your space even before the book comes out. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 bridges you'll cross. You'll cross that authority bridge, and you'll cross that permission bridge as you're coming together. So if today you were decided to have fun and make money and include writing a book as part of that process, I want you to put it in writing like Fred did and commit to doing it, and then now tell the world you're going to do it. Because you're going to put yourself on notice, and you're going to have people holding you accountable, and you need to start sharing at least 5% of the time, you know, that you've got a book coming out. Here's what it's going to be about. Here's the things you're going to address, and talk about the process, talk about the struggles, talk about, you know, looking for an agent and getting rejected, and talk about trying to find a publisher, and you know, talk about getting accepted. Just kind of talk about the book at least 5% of the time. The other 95% of the time, you want to continue to educate, encourage, inspire, and entertain your world, because you are the authority. But your audience will start seeing you from being a really wonderful resource, a great person who has knowledge that they love and trust, going from that stage to being an authority, because they watch it unfold in front of their eyes as you're becoming that. And as you get picked up by a publisher, and as you show the book cover like you just did, as you start getting to that point of having the book ready, you've become the authority in their eyes. And you've also, you know, haven't asked them to do anything yet, but you've also brought all these people with you down this path who are now vested in it with you. So they're going to want to see you succeed. They're going to go buy copies. They're going to tell people about it. They're going to share it with their friends, and they're going to be, you know, some of your biggest fans. And the other bridge that you cross almost simultaneously is that Seth Godin bridge that you guys may remember. It's earning the right to ask them to buy the book, or earning the right to ask them to help you down this path to becoming a best-selling author, or whatever your goals are. Of course, it has to include serving others. But by the time that you've done that, you haven't said, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book yet. But you've told them about the book. They know a book's coming. They're eager to watch it, and you are becoming an authority. They're waiting for you to ask them to buy the book. So it's easier. And then, of course, you'll do that for life. In fact, you'll relaunch your book, Fred. You should know this. You write this down. You'll relaunch your book as if it's brand spanking new at least once a year. And I'll tell you what I did with Performance-Driven Thinking. Performance-Driven Thinking came out in 2014. Well, David, why did it hit the Wall Street Journal in 2019? Well, because I kept relaunching the book every opportunity I had. Now, I had hiccups. Life got in the way, so things didn't go exactly as planned. But, you know, I kept it as relevant as I thought it was to the world, and it paid off. I'm not sure if that helps or not. But I had fun telling it. I really did.
I love it. I love it. It's like I should have brought a Tupperware bin with me to collect all the pieces of my brain that keep exploding here. This is so much fun. I mean, you know, I started chatting with you, I guess, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. We started hopping on phone calls, and I'm like, man, this guy sounds so cool. It sounds like he's got a really cool company. And then when I was actually approved and picked up by you guys for the book, and I started going through the process, I'm like, holy crap, this company is amazing. And I don't think I ever want to publish anywhere else except here.
That's right.
And it's like I always joke, I'm like, you should rename your company Beyond the Book, because I've literally done all this work and nothing had to do with writing the book. It all had to do with like marketing, placement, creating yourself as an authority, you know, ideas of like, it's like everything to do after the book is already written. And I'm like,
and
this is that, you know, that entrepreneur in me coming out. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and that's intentional because nobody wants to buy another book. It's really hard to sell a book, and that's why you see a lot of self-published authors. Again, you can have a success while self-publishing. Just don't do what typical self-publishing authors do. But you'll see self-published authors go from being their regular self to the very next day they got a book and they're trying to hit an Amazon bestseller list. Buy. And you haven't earned it, and then they have a splash because then people like you, and then it just kind of crashes and burns, and you never hear from them ever again. And they move on to something else. It is a process. It's a long game, but it works. And if you're not having fun in the process, you need to figure out where to find that hole and fix it, because you should be having fun and you should be making money. Now, Fred, I've already told you this, but I'm going to tell you again so other people can hear it, is you'll end up, as you already know, you'll end up earning more income, opportunity, and fun because of your book than you will from the book itself. You'll make more money because you are the authority in the space and you have the book. But a funny thing happens. You'll end up selling a boatload of books if you're not trying. And if you become that authority and play in that space and serve others, like I know you are and have done, you're going to end up doing really, really well. Much weller in the future than you are now.
Much weller. That's the quote of the day by David Hancock himself. Much weller. I love it.
I'm an entrepreneur first, editor last, so bear with me.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, like, everybody tells me, it's like, look, you don't make any money off of writing a book. I'm like, I know, but it's so much dang fun writing a book.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why I keep doing it. I just love sharing my message with the world.
Yep, absolutely. And the funny thing is, the more successful you are, the more books we end up selling, which keeps us in business to be able to serve others. So you keep doing that, brother.
Yeah. I mean, I love, like, we chatted yesterday and we, you know, talked about creating a synergy with some ideas. And I love doing that. I love JVing with people. I love bringing on teams and people like that because, you know, my thing is I'm ambitiously lazy. You know, I love entrepreneurship because I can automate and delegate most things. And I can just basically be this captain of this ship that's kind of going on with it. And so whenever you can do that, it just makes it that much more amazing.
Isn't that the truth?
David, this has been awesome, my friend. This is amazing stuff. What would you like to leave our audience with, and how can people get in contact with you, David? Because you're a cool dude to talk to.
Oh, I appreciate that, sir. Really, I just want to leave an inspiration that you can do it. You should do it as long as you're serving others, and you probably do have something worthy to say, and just start writing it down, start doing it, start moving down that path to become the authority, and let your world know it's happening so you'll be held accountable to get it actually done, and it can change your life. It can absolutely change your life. And I want you to have fun doing it. So I'm very approachable. You know, we were just at morganjamespublishing.com. You can follow me on Twitter, David Hancock and Morgan James Pub. But I'm eager to see you guys succeed. If you need anything, just don't hesitate to reach out. And maybe one day we'll have the privilege of working together. We do about 150 nonfiction books each year, and you got to be worthy and you got to be good. But, you know, you got to start somewhere.
Amazing. Amazing. David, I had a blast today. This was awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, I hope everybody out there is making money and having fun. See you guys.
That's right.